The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. This is Maria Disabella from the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. I'm the training coordinator here, and we are very lucky to have Amy Hill with us, the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy. Before I introduce Amy, we'd like to welcome all of you joining us live today. It's a lovely day here in Harrisburg. We hope that the sun is out where you are, but we are here together to learn some important things. And if this is your first time joining us for a webinar, just a couple housekeeping things. On the top right, you should have a control panel. And there's an orange arrow so that you can slide in and out. And with that window, you can then enter in any questions or comments in the little chat box. We want to hear from you. Right now, you're in listen-only mode. So if you would like to say something live or share with us, we can unmute you so then we can hear your actual voice. But continue to participate, continue to send in your comments or questions for us today. And without further ado, we are going to start this wonderful webinar. And Amy, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Maria. That was a very energetic introduction. I appreciate that very much. And welcome to all of you to this advocacy webinar. As she said, my name is Amy Hill. I am the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. I'm relatively new to the food bank. I've been on board since October, but I am no stranger to grassroots advocacy and lobbying and public relations. I've been doing this for many decades, and I've seen it all, I think, or I shouldn't say that. I'm afraid what I might see next. So yes, it's true, I am a lobbyist, but that is not a bad thing. Despite the sometimes hopeless polarization of issues and rhetoric in the public square, we do still live in a place where the opinions of constituents mean a lot. So lobbying is not a dirty word. It's just a tool that we can use to kind of represent our own constituents, those clients and customers who struggle with food insecurity. We can be their voice, we can amplify their voices by using lobbying and government relations. Advocacy takes on many forms. One thing that might be most familiar to you is getting our senators or representatives, both in Washington, D.C. and in Harrisburg, to vote yes or no on a particular piece of legislation. That's something that maybe even some of you have participated in that before. You can send an email, you make a phone call, you send a postcard maybe to say vote yes, vote no. That's a familiar type of advocacy. But advocacy also includes the nitty-gritty of the implementation of those laws that we're advocating for. So we also need to keep an eye on the regulations that are put forth for nearly every statute that iron out those details for implementing a new program or giving some guidance to the people who will put this in practice. So that is the particular aspect of advocacy that brings us here this afternoon. Under the current federal law, able-bodied adults without dependents, we call them ABODs, because that's what we do in food banking, is we give it an acronym, correct?
That's right, these crazy acronyms.
Right, so ABODs, they can get food assistance through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, food stamps. If they've lost their job or they're only working part-time or for whatever reason that they need some assistance, they don't have enough income to buy food for themselves. But there's a limit to how long they can receive those benefits. And I think that the reasoning behind this limit is that we want people to feel encouraged and supported in going out and working for a living and finding those jobs that can sustain them. So this law, this aspect of it, has been in place for quite a long time. However, states can choose to extend that help an additional year if unemployment is high in a particular area or there aren't any jobs in a person's community. One of the struggles I think we're seeing in Pennsylvania right now is there are jobs that are coming to Pennsylvania, but they require a certain kind of skill or they might be in the next town over. So there might be a lot of reasons why it's not that simple to say just go get a job. Currently, there are 25 of central Pennsylvania's 27 counties that qualify for this waiver. based on their unemployment statistics. The United States Department of Agriculture is proposing to take away that flexibility from states without considering the local circumstances or the local efforts that might be underway to help improve those job prospect opportunities. Now, we agree that getting people back to work is the best solution to their food insecurity, but we also believe that state and local officials have a better sense of whether or not jobs are available, if the people really have the skills to meet the needs of those employers, or if there might be other barriers in a particular community that are really more factors into the reason that people are unemployed. It's not as simple as they're just unwilling to get the jobs. So regulations like this one have a public comment period that allows citizens to weigh in with their opinion before the rule takes effect. So right now the clock is ticking for the receipt of these comments. We have until April 2nd, 2019 to voice our concerns to the USDA. And there are a couple different ways that we can easily share our opinions about these types of things. And the USDA has to read all of those comments and will factor them in when they decide whether or not this rule will go forward. So first you might want to asking yourself, well, why do we care about this government program, right? We're in the food bank business. We're interested in moving food and getting food on people's tables. Now that is true, but it is not just our mission to move food from one place to the other. It is also about making sure that people are fed. And we know that charitable donations to our food banks and our pantries and our soup kitchens and all the work that we do all over the territory is not enough to truly meet the needs of our neighbors who struggle with food insecurity. We must, as a community, seek public policies that help and not hinder these efforts to help people in need sort of find ways to support themselves and to rise them up out of poverty. So this page is a snapshot of who is in need in central Pennsylvania. 1 in 9 central Pennsylvanians struggle with hunger. 13% of them are seniors. 29% of them are children. And over half of the people who struggle with hunger are working families. And I think that's kind of an important note as we discuss all of this. And approximately 13,000 people would qualify as this able-bodied adults without dependents. So this map represents the level of need in the communities we serve. So some communities have sort of closed that meal gap a little sooner than others. And what that means is that the people who live there have access to healthy, nutritious food, whether it's from one of your agencies or from SNAP or from some other program that facilitates their ability to buy groceries and to feed themselves and their families. Public programs like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program are critical factors in meeting these needs. If SNAP were to go away, then that entire map would probably be red. And that's just a fact that we know when working with them. Next slide. So who are able-bodied adults without dependents? They are defined as people who are aged 18 to 49 who do not have a minor child in their household. Now that just does not mean that they aren't parents necessarily. They could be a non-custodial parent. They could be a caretaker of an adult parent or something like that. But basically it's kind of working age people who do not have dependents. We know that almost 3/4 of the people who meet this definition live in deep poverty. That is less than half the poverty line for one person. So they are genuinely struggling. And there are lots of people in sort of all ages within this category. Half of them are under the age of 30. 1/5 of them are in their 30s, and another 1/3 of them are in their 40s. So it's not just the young 18, 22-year-olds who are just sort of starting out on their own. It's people who have maybe a little bit more life experience as well. Many of these people need additional training and education for today's jobs. They may have a high school diploma. but a high school diploma in many communities is not enough to get a good job. Then they might also have struggles with addiction or mental health issues. Not everybody qualifies for a medical exemption. Not everybody has a disability by the definition of the law, but I think every one of us probably knows somebody in our world who struggles terribly with the mental health capacity to sort of get and keep a job. I have a good friend with a son who's in his mid-30s. He's the non-custodial parent of 3 terrific kids, but between drug addiction, alcoholism, and mental health that has been very difficult to find services for, he's really struggled terribly for his entire adult life. And he is somebody who needs a little bit of sensitivity to put food on his table. Some of these people perhaps have a criminal record. Maybe they did something stupid when they were young that put them behind bars, and they served their time, and they're doing just fine and all of that, but that record can follow them for the rest of their lives. Now, Pennsylvania just passed a law at the late last session that will give an opportunity for people to get those records expunged, which I think will do a lot to help people find and get jobs, because we know right now that that is a major factor that interferes with a person's ability to get a good job. They have to check that box. Do you have a criminal record? And it doesn't even really matter what the crime was or how long ago it was. It's enough for employers to turn somebody away. Some of these people have jobs, which might come as a surprise, I think, to some people, but they work in the kind of jobs where it is difficult to have a consistent 20 hours a week. So that is what the rule says, is it counts as a work requirement if you're getting a consistent 20 hours a week on average during the month. We had a snowy, cold winter, and if the company closes and you're on a shift work, you get less than 20 hours in a couple of weeks in a row because snow shuts down right away. You're disqualified for all of this. So it's a difficult situation. And most of the counties in our 27 county region are rural by every definition of that word. Jobs might be in the next town. They might be 20 miles away, 30 miles away. If you don't have a car or you don't have a driver's license, which is a common situation, then it doesn't matter how many jobs are in your county. You can't get there. You can't take that job. So currently, states may apply for waivers. So that means that if the area is something that clearly local officials can understand that the jobs are far away, they know that people are struggling, they know that there's quite a few people in the area who are really not able to get to these jobs, then they can use that economic data and make the case to the USDA that the people who live in those communities should not have to be limited by the strict limits in those areas. What USDA is proposing is to take away or further restrict the state's ability to apply for those waivers. What they are proposing to do is that it's a math formula, basically, that based on what the unemployment rate is in your community, a certain percentage above it, if it's above sort of the national average, then you can apply for one of these waivers. Right now, it's rather generous. You can have quite a few, really anything that's kind of above the unemployment rate, you can determine that. However, they're going to restrict that quite a bit. So if they restrict it to the level that they're proposing, which would be 10% above what the national average is, that would basically take away this waiver for almost all of the counties in our territory. It wouldn't mean that more jobs are available. It wouldn't mean that people have greater ability to do it. It would just mean we're taking away their SNAP benefits. We know that this would affect about 755,000 people nationwide, and about 13,000 people here in central Pennsylvania. And what does that mean? Well, it means that there would be a gap then. People who had been receiving SNAP benefits to help put food on their tables would no longer have access to that. But they're still hungry, they still have to eat. So they're going to enter into our pantries and our soup kitchens, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with, ready or not. What the rule says now is that they can get SNAP benefits without the job, but it's only for 3 months within a 3-year period. So that is not a very long time. It can take people at least 3 months to just search for a job. They can continue to receive those SNAP benefits if they can prove that they are working at least 20 hours a week, or they are in school or training at least half the time, or they qualify for a medical exemption. There are some people who can get an exemption for some kind of disability that makes it difficult for them to work. Or they can take on volunteer opportunities for, if they can show that they're working 26 hours a month in some volunteer capacity, then they can continue to receive their SNAP benefits. So it sounds reasonable for the most part, but time spent on a job search does not count. So that can be a real hindrance when, if you've ever been in a situation like that, or you have someone in your life who's been looking for a job. It can be an all-consuming type of activity, and it can be hard to sort of take a job somewhere else while you're looking for something a little more permanent. So where do the counties stand now? So you can kind of see here on this map what the Central PA territory is sort of outlined there, a little bit darker line. Those are our 27 counties. Right now, all of the counties except for Center and Lancaster have waivers under the current rule. Lancaster City is waived because of their economic situation, but the county is not. So it's kind of hard to see on that little map about all of that. If we were to see this rule go forward, 19 of those 25 would lose their waivers. 19 of them. So there's a few here and there kind of peppered throughout the map that would still qualify, but most of them the people who live in those communities would have to give up their SNAP benefits based on the new rule. So the proposed rule would require an area's unemployment rate to be at least 7% for a recent 24-month period to qualify for a waiver. What the USDA is doing throughout this rule-making process is seeking for evidence-based and data-driven feedback on what level would be sufficient. So this is the kind of confusing part of this rule, a very technical part of the rule. But basically what it means is if they put a stricter standard on it, basically saying you have to be really, really, really high unemployment in your neighborhood to qualify for an exemption. It doesn't have any sort of local control where there might be really high unemployment in a particular borough or a particular township, but because there's a city that's 10 miles away that has job opportunities, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's kind of those areas. So you can see there how many different ABODs would be sort of kicked off the rolls at those different levels. Next slide. So what do we do about this? So I think it's important to note that from the food bank's official position on all of this, we believe that getting people back to work is the best solution for food insecurity, that we're not at all opposed to requiring people to work and not at all opposed to helping them achieve that goal. This isn't about just continuing on with the status quo or letting people get away with something that is undeserved. And we also agree that SNAP is meant to be supplemental and temporary. We know it doesn't really provide enough food by itself. It's certainly not something that is a comfortable position to be in by itself. And we know that it's meant to be temporary. It's supposed to fill in when something goes wrong in a particular person's life, and that helps kind of keep food on the table until things resolve themselves. So where do our objections lie with all of this? Well, we do believe that local communities are best equipped to address their own problems. All of you are on the front lines of hunger. You can look people in the eyes, you know their stories, you know what they're up against, you know what it's like to live in your community. You know a lot better than the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. at the USDA who are making some of these decisions. We also know that broad unemployment numbers don't paint the full picture. Because of the things that people struggle with, it's not just that there's a job in the next community and they just have to fill in the application and get the job. It's a real thing to struggle with addiction, to struggle with mental health, to struggle with a criminal record, transportation issues, family issues, you name it. There's a lot of different things that factor in to somebody's ability to get and keep a job. Further, Pennsylvania is getting ready to invest in a massive workforce development and technical training program. Both sides of the aisle here in Harrisburg have strong opinions about what's going on in the workforce in Pennsylvania. We have all kinds of companies who are moving to Pennsylvania, high-tech companies, manufacturing companies, people with kind of harder skills than we've seen in a generation. And we don't have workers who have the skills to do those jobs. One state legislator I know who's in our territory talked about how he's had employers actually pick up and leave because they had such trouble recruiting people to come and work at their jobs with the good salaries and all of that sort of thing. So they're starting to identify that this is kind of a good problem to have. We have all this interest in bringing jobs to Pennsylvania. But it is a modern world, and not everybody really knows those kinds of skills, especially on the technical side of things. Lots of people might have a college degree, but not as many people know how to do welding or electrical work or those kinds of things. So there's a big push to do this. We believe that we should have the flexibility to give this stuff an opportunity to really work. Taking food stamps away from people before those workforce development programs are really kicked off in their communities is unfair. It's unfair. We should have that flexibility at least for a few more years to see if Pennsylvania can do something to turn this around. And we also know that being hungry does not help someone get a job. It doesn't make them more employable, doesn't make them more motivated to get off the sofa and go do it. It's just a fact that is true. So what can we do about it? Well, we have this opportunity to weigh in with our public comments. You can submit comments on behalf of your organization. You may submit comments on behalf of yourself as an individual. You may submit comments on behalf of your book club, on behalf of your church, on behalf of your whatever groups that you are in. Every comment counts. And the USDA is looking particularly for unique and individual comments. They should be comments that really mean something. The more personalized, the better. They have algorithms in their review of these things that will kick out the kind of cut and paste type of comments. They need to be at least 1/3 of the comment needs to be different language than somebody else's comment for it to count as an individual comment. The other positive thing about all of this is they are obligated by law to read and process and catalog every single one of the comments that goes in there. So we can kind of dazzle them with many, many pages. It could take many months or even years for them to get through all of this. And what does that mean? Well, that means people who are receiving those SNAP benefits now can continue to do that, and maybe we'll get a chance to get our workforce development programs working before this really comes to hit them. So do your own comments. That's one thing that you can do. The second thing that we can do is share this information with our grassroots networks. You may have clients who are affected by this. Maybe you could set up an opportunity for them to share their own stories with the USDA and talk about that sort of fearful prospect of taking those benefits away. You may have volunteer networks. I know that the main food bank here has thousands of volunteers. You should ask them to weigh in on this type of thing. You can share it far and wide. And then the same goes with your other partner organizations. Many of you have lots of partners who are doing lots of different things, whether it's housing, you're working with drug and alcohol treatment programs, you're working with all kinds of neighborhood programs. Just share it far and wide. The more comments we do, the better. So what I'd like to do is sort of walk us through what this comment process looks like. Now, there's several different ways that you can do this. One, the easiest way to do it is to just go online, type in your comments, and click a button, and you're done. You could also write a good old-fashioned letter and put it in an envelope and stick a stamp on it and mail it to the USDA. And after this webinar is over, I will share the address for that information if you prefer to do it that way. Or you could even sort of like jot it on a postcard or something like that. Same thing. You can stick it in the mail and send it that way. But I think that the clicking through at the website that they have, it's very easy to use. So Maria, why don't we cue that up here,
Sure,
and we'll walk through a comment.
And we'll definitely send you the presentation with all the links. We just, in the essence of time, we were able to go to the website as Amy had suggested. This is the website and where our comments are submitted electronically.
So what we did here is I just kind of typed up a real basic letter. I got this information from the Feeding America. This was sort of their sample comments. And what I'd like to do is sort of personalize it a little bit. And so Maria's going to type in. So it says, I am writing to oppose stricter time limits with the SNAP. There are already strict rules for people who don't have children or dependents, able-bodied adults without dependents to get food assistance with SNAP. Let's put another sentence in right after that. Let's say there are many reasons. I'm putting Maria on the spot here.
It's my typing skills. Here we go, that typing class. Don't look at the keys.
Here we go. There are many reasons why people can't get a job. Addiction, mental health issues, a criminal record, a lack of transportation, or the wrong skills. Okay, and then it says, we should not make the existing harsh rules even worse by taking away state flexibility or exposing more people to time-limited benefits. Let's put another sentence in there. Local communities are trying to address these concerns. They should have the ability, let's say they should have the flexibility to do what they feel is best without causing hardship. And then the rest goes on there. Increasing the ability of USDA to deny state waivers for easing harsh SNAP time limits and expanding the people. These strict rules apply and will only increase the number of people facing hunger in this country. And then let's just do kind of in closing. Please consider that local communities know best. And keep the rules as they stand. Okay, so I'll put my name in here. I'm going to put this in as myself, as a citizen. The Central PA Food Bank will be submitting its own, probably much lengthier, with lots of charts and graphs and that sort of thing. And then I'll say I want to provide my contact information. Okay, I'm going to tell everybody where I live.
Do you want
Yeah, we'll put the food bank, yeah. And then my email address, abhill at Central PA Food Bank, 717-547-6269. And then hit continue, because I'm doing it on behalf of myself and not a third party. Go ahead, hit continue. So that's how it looks. That looks fine.
It's nice. They give you time to preview.
Oh, yeah.
It goes through. Oh,
Yep.
That's good.
Yep, that's me. And then you're filling a document in official docket. Okay, I get that. I want them to see that I did it.
That's
I'm
right.
proud of that, right? So,
Read it.
So click I read and understand the statement, and then hit submit comment.
Ready? Here we go.
Here we go. So that's it. That's absolutely all there is to it. Now, that is, not a lot of pages, of course. It will only take them a couple of minutes to read through that. But I feel happy to share my opinion as an ordinary citizen to do that. So let's go back to the slides. So it's not a small thing to know that this stuff adds up. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter how short or long or even how well written your comment is, they do have to read every single unique comment. And so it really is an opportunity to tell the story, to paint the picture of hunger in your community and what this rule might have an effect on it. You might have opinions about how you think it would be better improved. You can really submit whatever you want. So it's good to do it. It's good to definitely do it. Next slide. So there are several places where they're keeping track of this ruling. A lot of research has been done, facts and figures, at least on a national level. And there's also some tools at these three organizations that really can make it easy for you to kind of learn more about the issue, and then you can synthesize that with your own experience at the local level, and you can kind of put your own comments in there based on what you're learning on all of this. So this is Feeding America. Central Pennsylvania Food Bank is an affiliate of Feeding America, so it's just a network of food banks all over the whole country. And advocacy is a big part of what they do. So they have a team of lobbyists just like me down in Washington, D.C. who are keeping tabs on this issue. There's tons of good information there that you can link to and read about and share through there. The Hands Off SNAP campaign is sponsored by the Center for American Progress. So again, it's another place where you can kind of get some sample comments, you can get some more background information. And the third place is the Food Research and Action Center, FRAC, that again, it's another advocacy, it's an anti-hunger advocacy organization that's kind of based in Washington, D.C. with lobbyists and others who are sort of pressing for this issue. So there's great places where you can learn how to do this. That is sort of a quick summary of the presentation, but we certainly would like to open it up for questions.
Let's hear from you. Please send in via the chat box, send in any questions or any comments, or if we'd like to we want to hear your voice. There's a little icon of a hand that you can raise your hand, and then I will definitely unmute you so we can hear you live. So please take a moment to either type in your question or comment or raise that hand. Let's raise it high.
So while you're thinking about your questions, just again to reiterate that we have until April 2nd. So that's just a couple weeks from now to get these comments in for them in order for them to be counted. The USDA will take it from there. It could take a long time for them to catalog all of the comments. So it's a little bit up in the air about whether or not or when they would come out with their final rulemaking, which would then be the law of the land. You can, when we share these resources, you can look and read the proposed rule. If you're into that sort of thing, it's very technical, but you can see for yourself exactly what they're proposing and the impact that it would have. So they do put a lot of effort into it. That it sounds like a difficult thing. But it is definitely something where we do have a voice and we could have an influence on the outcome of all of this. I think one other note that I should share in terms of background is the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program is actually an extension of the federal Farm Bill. So you've probably heard that the Farm Bill was a big deal at the end of last year. They passed the reauthorization of that. Congress debated this time limit for work requirements throughout the course of the debate, and they voted against this stricter time limit. So what the USDA is proposing is actually going against the legislative intent of the Farm Bill. So that's kind of another aspect here that it's certainly legal for them to put forth regulations that are a little stricter than all of that stuff. But I hope that's something that will get factored in as they decide exactly how to roll this out.
Okay. We do have a question, Amy.
Okay.
Our good friend Joanne Fortney from our friends at New Hope Ministries. So her question is, when you say that they, meaning USDA, needs to read each comment, how many people are we talking about?
I guess you're asking like how many employees of USDA have to read the comments. That's a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head. I know, just having worked with government agencies in the past, that they work with sort of a skeletal crew. So it's probably a handful of people who would have to read them. So it is definitely something that takes a lot of time.
Okay, perfect. Good. All right, Sarah from Man and Food Pantry, thank you for your comment. She says that she will send in a letter, so we definitely need that information that we'll send out of where to address this letter, and she's hopefully going to have some of our volunteers do so also. Good.
That's great. Thank you very much for doing that. That is really the best way to kind of get the word out about this. Those of us who work with this kind of anti-hunger efforts every day, we need to take this out of sort of the political rhetoric of all of this and get it back to the reality. This proposal, I think, some people will say that it's going to cut spending for SNAP, and I think some of it, probably rightly so, that we do need to hold people more accountable for self-sufficiency and that sort of thing. But this is not really going to balance the federal budget if they take this away from what really amounts to not that many people in the scheme of things. But the principle of it, the precedent of saying the federal government knows best about how to solve hunger in our communities, I think is very troubling. It's not even really the exact impact of it that we should be worried about. It's really about standing up for the people we serve every day, so we can be the people who serve it at the local level, and not have our own hands tied in how we kind of meet our needs at that level.
That's perfect. That's a perfect way to end. It is in the hands of our folks that have joined us today and those that we will send the session to. It is in our hands, really, to help our local community, to help those that we serve. And that's our mission here. So Amy, any final comments, any final
Sure.
thoughts here?
So on the next slide, I will share my contact information. I would invite any of you who perhaps would like a little bit of assistance in crafting your comments. I have lots of resources. I also have been kind of working very closely with this issue. We could even kind of spitball it over the phone if you want some help with that sort of thing, because I know sometimes it's kind of hard when you're staring at a blank screen. What should we say? Now, we're going to share some of these resources. That there's many resources to make it easy for you, but again, the real benefit of this advocacy effort is in those unique comments. So if you want to just sort of talk through a little bit, if you have questions about what it means for you and your community, then by all means, reach out to me. There's my phone number. There's my email address. Myself and my colleague, Karen Woodings, who is also part of the advocacy department, we're here to help you, because ultimately it will definitely help the people we serve to get as many comments in as possible.
Perfect. And someone had a question about making this session available for other individuals. Definitely. We will, as follow-up, we're going to send out the recording. We'll send out all the presentation, any accompanying information, and also the USDA address to anyone that registered. Okay? And that you can share freely with your network of people.
And I would strongly encourage you to do that. One of the things that I will share as a handout is sort of some sample content, if you will, that could serve as a kind of a grassroots outreach tool. Would just be a paragraph or two that kind of very quickly and easily explains it, and then it will include a link to where they could go online and put their own comments in. So easy as can be, and spread it far and wide.
That's right. April 2nd. April 2nd. Very much. We need to do this. So thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for sharing your information, giving us the knowledge that we need to help those and try and stall this process. So thank you for those that joined us. And again, we wish you a wonderful day. Take care now. Bye-bye.